Good morning, everybody. Welcome back. Hope you're all doing all right. So today we're going to carry on thinking about ideology. We're going to move on from democracy and dictatorship to think about two other types of differences in the ideology of countries. Now, I put this slide up here. It's a bit unfair, really, because if we were doing this in class, this is the lesson where I get to hand out loads of Skittles to you all, and you can try and avoid eating them for the first few minutes of the activity, and then probably they start disappearing off the desk and suddenly half of them are gone. But it's an activity to try and understand how wealth and money is shared across the world and how that is often unfairly distributed. So people don't all get an equal access to the wealth and the opportunities that exist in the world. And that's what we're going to think about a bit about today. So sorry you haven't got any Skittles, but the point of the exercise was for you to experience firsthand unfairness, and presumably you would feel some of you would feel really happy at the end of the activity because you would have tons of Skittles that you could eat, and some of you would end up with none, and that would be quite unfair. So today what we're going to think about is the ideological difference around something called capitalism. And we're going to think about capitalism and communism and different types of ideology to do with the economy. But today we're thinking about capitalism. Okay, some of you will have heard of this before. Some of you, this will be a totally new phrase, concept. So that's what today's lesson is all about. So learning intentions for today, we're going to think about the four principles of capitalism. So the four things that are necessary in a capitalist society. And then the main thing is I want you to start reflecting on your own opinions about this. We live in a capitalist country. The UK is a capitalist country. So I want you to start thinking about the country that we live in and these principles of capitalism and what you think about this. Okay? Right, so this is the regular reminder for you. I want you to be really comfortable with this phrase ideology, right? So remember, ideology is just a set of ideas about how a country should be run. Okay? That's the definition we've gone over before. Now, in yesterday's lesson, we talked about those differences being political, so democracy versus dictatorship. But they could also be economic. Remember, economics is anything to do with money, so the financial system in a country. So those differences could be economic in terms of capitalist versus communist. Okay? And that's what we're going to think about the capitalist side of that today. So this is a very brief definition. Capitalism is an economic system which is focused on making a profit and where goods and services are owned privately. Now, over the course of this lesson, we're going to take that apart and understand it a bit better. But essentially, the main thing to know about capitalism is it's about making a profit. In other words, making money off whatever the product is that you are selling. Okay? Really crucial element of capitalism is this idea of supply and demand. Okay, so demand for a product is talking about the people who want to buy the product. So if you've got queues of people outside a shop wanting to buy a brand new Xbox or a brand new PlayStation or whatever it might be, then you've got demand. And if people want to buy the thing that you've got, then you can put the price up because people are willing to pay more if loads of people want the thing. Okay? Supply is the other side of that. So supply is actually providing that thing that people will buy. So manufacturing it or growing it or digging it out of the earth, whatever it might be. And if supply is low, if you don't have very much of something, that also pushes the price up because it means there's not that much to buy. So if you think of gold, for example, all through history, gold has been a particularly expensive thing for people to have because there's not very much of it in the world and you can't manufacture it, you can't make more gold. So once it's gone, it's gone. So that makes it expensive because there's not very much of it. To think about it as a real example, this is probably one of the best examples, is the two apples. Okay, so on the left, you've got a normal apple that you'd buy in a shop for, I don't know, 20 pence, maybe. I don't even know how much an apple costs actually, but maybe 20, 30 pence. And they're relatively cheap because although there's quite a lot of demand for them, there's a huge number of apples around the world, right? Supply is good. We're not short of apples. And we can grow more apples all the time. Okay? So the price is kept quite low because you've got lots of that product. It's not scarce. On the other side, you've got Apple, the company, right, who make iPads, iPhones, computers, all that stuff. Okay, the supply of those is quite low. They don't manufacture billions of them all over the planet so that they're just sitting around in shops. They manufacture enough for people to buy, so the supply is relatively low and demand is very high. People want these products, so they're willing to pay much, much more for them. So although you look at those two apples and you know straight away that an Apple phone, an iPhone costs a lot more than an Apple, that's the capitalist system working. Okay? So the four principles of capitalism, I'm not going to go into these in a huge amount of detail, but the first one is that companies are owned by private individuals. Okay, they're not owned by the government, they're not owned by all of us collectively as the people who live in a country. They're owned by private individuals. Now, in most companies, that's shareholders. So you could go out today and buy shares in Microsoft. They would cost you a lot of money because Microsoft's a very wealthy company. But you could go out and buy a share in Microsoft and you would own part of that company as a private individual. Same with Coca-Cola, same with Apple, Facebook. All of these are companies that you can go and buy shares in. But the point is the country doesn't own those companies. Individual people do. Okay? Remember, we talked a bit about profit. The aim of a company is to make money. Okay, that's the driving focus of every single person working in a company, is to try and make money. That's the key thing in a capitalist system. One of the other aspects is that there has to be competition and choice. Okay, so it's called a monopoly. You know, the game Monopoly. The aim in the game Monopoly is for one player to own the whole board. Well, that comes from the word monopoly, which means that one company controls all of the product. So say the only company in the world that was able to make phones was Apple. That would be a monopoly. In order for there to be in a capitalist system, you have to have choice so that consumers could choose to buy a Samsung or a Huawei phone or a whatever other types of phones are, Sony phone or whatever. There's competition, okay? So you can choose different products. And finally, the government doesn't get too involved in how companies make money. So they get involved in some ways, like, for example, the minimum wage. So you've got to pay your workers a certain amount of money. Or health and safety, so you've got to keep your workers safe. But beyond that, the government keeps out of the way. They don't take loads of profit, although they do tax the companies, but they try and keep out of the way and let the system make money by itself. So that's one of the key principles of capitalism. So try and remember those four principles: private ownership, profit, competition and choice, and the government keeps out of the way as much as possible. That's a bit of a definition there, which you can maybe take a screenshot of, or you can come back to later. So I'm now going to give you, I think, maybe 3 or 4, I can't remember how many are on these slides, but if we were in class, I would be getting you up and we'd be having a bit of a debate about these. We obviously can't do that, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to post each of these questions on the Microsoft team, and I want you to come back and tell me if you agree or disagree and why. Okay, so this is a question that's often said about capitalism, that the incentive, so in other words, the thing that encourages you, so basically the idea that you could become rich means that you work harder than everybody else. So do you think people work harder because they might get rich if they work harder? Do you agree with that or do you disagree with that? That's the first one. Second one is, do you think companies can be too powerful? So do you think big companies like Microsoft, Apple, or big kind of oil companies like Shell or BP, do you think they're too powerful? And do you think it is a good idea that you're a consumer, and anyone who buys things is a consumer, okay? So do you think it's good that we get a choice of products? Or do you think actually it would be better if you went into a shop and there was just one product, but it was maybe cheaper? Okay, so maybe competition is a good thing or a bad thing. What do you think? And the fourth one, everyone should be paid the same. That way there'd be no poverty. So we know that even in capitalist countries, think about this country, we're a very, very wealthy country, one of the biggest economies on the planet, yet we've got lots of people living in poverty. So if we did away with people earning £1 million wages at the top of companies and we paid everybody exactly the same, do you think that's a good idea? Yes or no? Or do you think people should get paid differently? So these are the four opinions I want us to think about. I'll post them in the teams and we'll hopefully get a bit of a discussion going. Please participate. Don't just sit there liking other people's posts. Please try and take part. Everyone's opinion is valid. And like yesterday, I'm now going to post a little link here to an introductory video about capitalism, which I want you to watch before you come back to the Microsoft team. Okay? Hope that all makes sense. Let me know in the comments on the team if it doesn't, or if you've got any questions, or if you want to make any comments or criticisms about these presentations. I'm happy to take on board feedback. Otherwise, have a really good day, and I'll see you soon. Goodbye.